Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today, a stash builder video. We are going to make DIY white collage papers. We're going to create them. Here they are, sneak peek. And then we are going to use them on not one, not two, but 3 art journal spreads. So we're going to get a good idea of how they work. So what you need is some white paint and some tissue paper. Now, as you can see, this tissue paper is all wrinkled up and has seen better days. It is just simply dollar store tissue paper. I have some packaging that I'm going to be able to create on, and then I can move this off to the side as I build another one. It just makes it easier and keeps my surface clean. So basically I'm going to cut the tissue paper to approximately a 12 by 12 size, or sizes that will fit on my packaging. Don't worry about the wrinkles, don't worry if there's rips in it, because we can, this is so forgiving and accommodating. So what you also want is a selection of mark makers, and today am using stencils. I have hole punch, chicken wire reverse, knitted stitch, leafy texture, can't remember the name of that one, and I'm trying out different ones that I like. This is dotted ring, believe this is garden gate, leafy fans, and this is a mandala stencil, or the center of a 12 by 12. I'm also going to try this sand dollar and a focal image one. Now I'm using fluid acrylic Liquitex. You can use the regular paint, both. I've tried both, and for my knowledge there didn't seem to be any difference. You can use gesso, more about that later. So I'm just putting that aside, and I'm going to be applying it with a makeup sponge. So the process here is really simple. This is a quick, easy stash builder. It's kind of mindless, one color paint, selection of stencils. And you're just going to take the makeup sponge and put it in. Now I'm not pressing down hard on the makeup sponge because I don't want it's leaking under. It's not the end of the world, because what we're creating in collage papers for the most part is mark makers that are going to be white. This is just a layer in the process. Now if you were doing the focal point one, like the sand dollar, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful. So this is really forgiving. This is also a good way you can just stencil out use your stencils and really get a good idea for what they look like. Now I'm going to do whatever you see me doing here, and that is all going into my stash. Another time I might pull out other stencils and do them and add them to the stash. And typically I want things that can be added to any kind of page, and this will really streamline your process. So here I decide I'm going to switch to gesso, and my thinking with using gesso is gesso will act as a resist, so maybe you could do more things with it when you're using it. Now as soon as I start applying it here, I realize that when you put gesso on a stencil, gesso really sticks to the stencil. So typically I always wash the gesso off ASAP. I don't do that with my acrylic paints. So if I was going to use gesso on here, and that's an option, I highly recommend that you wash the stencil after using the gesso on it. So have a tub and then throw the stencil in that and get it off as soon as possible. Otherwise it just tends to adhere on it, and you may have difficulty getting it off at a later date. So because I don't want to have extra work cleaning. I wanted to spend my time creating. I'm not going to be using gesso on this anymore. And I do wash this stencil right away. So there is that one. So now I have some smaller pieces of tissue paper. Again, I'm using what's in my stash to build my stash. And I'm putting on a couple layers of the paint. I want it fairly opaque, especially for this focal image. Now I went off the page or off the sheet of the paper on that one because I thought, oh, you know what, I might have sometimes where you deliberately put a focal image off the page. So I figured I'm going to use the paper. As I said earlier, I will be using these tissue papers, white collage sheets, on art journal pages, and I'm actually going to finish 3 art journal pages in this video. This is Knitted Things or Knitted Stitch, and this is a good all-purpose general one. That's why I'm doing like a full 12 by 12 sheet of it. Now, someone might be asking, why wouldn't you just stencil on white on your art journal page? Well, that requires you to take out the stencil, get the white paint, stencil on it, and sometimes your art journal page is bulky over the center and it's a little bit more difficult. So as I finish the art journal pages, we'll address that and some of the benefits of having it as collage papers. One of the benefits right here is I have one makeup sponge, one cleanup time. I have one build my stash session, and I have one cleanup time. And having it on tissue paper allows you to audition it in various places and see what it might look like before you do it. And I love being able to do that. I wasn't sure about this stencil because there's a lot of white, but I did actually manage to use this in one of the pages that you'll see me create. So try all of them. It's a piece of tissue paper from the dollar store. Nothing lost. So while I'm going to recommend some of these stencils because they're good basic ones, use what you have. Now the reason I'm doing white is I've started to do a lot of stamping and stenciling at different parts of my art journal pages in white, and I'm really liking that effect, so I thought maybe I could streamline that process in this way. However, I find out this isn't a new idea. People have done this, are doing this. It's just something that I'm interested in doing right now. So once they are all done, I'm just cutting them apart into the different materials, and I will keep these in a file folder in my filing cabinet ready to go. Actually, they may not even make it into the filing cabinet because I want to have them at hand and use them regularly to add white markings on my projects. So this is a gel print art journal, and I will link the video that I show how to do this. Now the gel print has white on there, so I'm just going to quickly show you that I'm just picking the colors that are in it and colorizing that white edge. Now using the gel print is another way to jumpstart your creation. Here's one with purple and turquoise, so I'm going to mix purple and turquoise and add that and colorize that white edge. So that's an easy way to solve the problem if your gel print doesn't cover your entire surface. So now I want to addition them, and I can put that on, and what's white paint is going to stay white. What is just tissue paper will go fairly translucent. Now I'm using a liner brush and water to water cut it out to get kind of a deckled edge. You can cut it, but it's tissue paper, so it's a little bit difficult to cut. I find it's much faster using the water cut technique. And here I've used this dotted ring stencil and I've glued them on. And now I just decided that I want to add some on there. I kind of did a little bit ahead just to make sure that it was going to work the way I thought it should. And it did. Now you want to make sure that everything's dry before you try to cut it, because you can't cut wet tissue paper. And here I'm just cutting part of it off and piecing it together, which is an advantage of using the tissue paper. You don't have to try to line up the stencils. Some stencils are really difficult to line up. I can just piece it in, layer it up. And I'm using fluid matte medium to glue it down, and I'm using a good healthy amount of it. Here I've put the hole punch tissue paper on, but I'm going again to add to it now that I have some ideas about what I want to do. Water cutting it, matte medium. This is one of the pages that I will be finishing completely, so you're going to see this from beginning to end. And you can just see how easy it is to extend it and build it once you have all these pieces, these collage papers at hand. Now you can mix and match the collage papers. You can pick two of the different patterns on one. Now with the sand dollar, I actually just use scissors to cut it. And I'm layering up 3 of them. And I have to tell you, I really love how that worked. And I even used the one that was wasn't quite a full one, because it is going off the edge. And I love how the background is just peeking through a little bit. Now, I chose to use this art journal, this DIY art journal, because the backgrounds they're not really busy. They are a work in progress. Here I decided I wanted to use this Leafy Fans collage paper, and I even glue it down on here. I like how it matches the center of the sand dollar. Glue it down. And then I decide, I don't like it. And here's one of the advantages. I can easily remove it. I sprayed with a little bit of water and I just peel it off and grab a baby wipe and remove it. So here is the collage paper where I use the Leafy Texture stencil. All these stencils are from the Crafters Workshop, and I want a wave that goes through the middle of it. So I'm just using my water brush and my brush with water on it, and making kind of a wave that I can glue throughout the middle of this. Those little pieces that I take off can be glued onto another art journal page. And then I'm just gluing it down. And a coat on top as well. Now it is tissue paper, and while it is harder, or it's stronger than just napkin when you're decoupage napkins. Here I'm just peeling off a piece. I didn't like that one there, so I'm just scraping it off. So let's finish these pages. Here I'm just adding some marks. Remember, what you're adding with these white collage papers is just one part of the whole page, one layer. This one happens to be the focal image, but you're still going to add other marks along the way. But having these collage papers as well as the gel prints, it's just jump-started the process. So if you're somebody who has a short period of time to create, this is a way to get done a page quickly because you've got a lot of the parts pre-done. Now there's that turquoise in the background, so I decide that I'm going to paint her dress turquoise to make it fit. And again, this focal image, the Julie Nutting doll here, I had in my stash. When I make them, I make more, and then the leftovers go in the stash, and they're in various stages of being done. And then all I have to do is tweak them and make them fit. Now I have these script stamps, and I'm using it to combine with a sentiment. So the sentiment I got from my Ocean Commotion sentiment pack, and instead of using the last word, I'm using the script stamps. When I organized my studio, I realized that some of these stamps I'm not using, so I'm making an effort to use them more. And this is one way to use your letter stamps without having to stamp out something that's, 25, 40 letters long. I don't have the patience for that. But doing an 8-letter word, I can do that. Do some shading and finishing along here to make the focal images stand out. I'm using the Stabilo All pencil to sketchily outline my collage paper focal image. I love them, and I definitely will be looking through my stencils for other focal image stencils that I can do the same. And there we have it, the finished page. I absolutely love this one. So here I'm just edging it, and the reason I'm edging it first as opposed to near the end is because I have the black paint and this sponge sitting there, and I thought I would use it while it's still wet. Went through my magazines, and both of these girls have that kind of turquoise color that's in the background. This one fits better. I grabbed my Sassy Saying sentiment pack, and I'm thinking about a couple of them and thinking about the orientation. Don't want to cover up the stenciling, so I end up grabbing the flowers from another white collage paper that I created. I'm going to add those 3 stars that I cut out, but first I'm going to use my dot stamp and just add some black dots to the background. Add a little bit more interest to the background. And now simply gluing all my images down. Love how the layered white collage papers, the 2 different collage papers, look together. But I decide, I'm going to use some of my white paint and make these ones a little bit bolder, stand out a little bit more from the background, and I'm just putting a coat of white paint on them. So you can do that to some or all of the white collage papers if you want them more opaque for whatever reason, because it suits your page better. Here I'm painting her shoes, the turquoise color, and then I paint her dress just to deepen the color a little bit, just so it stands out a little bit more. After all, it's the focal image. The sassy sayings go really well with a lot of those magazine pictures that are very easily sourced. I'm adding a little bit of shading above and below the wave in the turquoise color, just to highlight it a little bit. And using black to go around the sentiment. Using my white Posca pen to add some dots and details to her dress. And then I thought, you know, I have colored Posca pens that I never use, so I grab a light blue one that looks almost turquoise. I'm just doing a little line work on the flowers. Using these colored Posca pens is on my use it or lose it list. I have not used them. Admittedly, they have not gone bad. They have not dried up, but I need to start using them. So today was one of those days. And there's the second page all done. Here is the third page, and I'm going to use a couple of these crazy birds from Tim Holtz and a napkin from Ninny's Napkin, as well as this heart stamp, which also came from Ninny's Napkin. I want to add a little bit more red to the background. There is a little bit, but I want a little bit more. And since I'm using the heart balloon napkin, I wanted to go with that theme. This page is very dark, so I needed to add a little bit more color there. Now I'm just using the same watercut technique to remove any of that excess napkin. Although typically the napkin I find will go more translucent than tissue paper, but that'll vary with where you source your tissue paper. I've gotten tissue paper from the dollar store at one time and it goes very, very translucent, and other times it doesn't. So here I'm just gluing it down. Now, because my background is so dark, you'll notice that these red balloons kind of get very dark. But I'm going to show you how to fix that very easily. I'm just gluing everything down with my fluid matte medium. Now I'm using some red paint and I'm going over the ballooned napkins. Now because there's texture from the napkin, that's adding some wonderful texture to these hearts now. I'm just brightening them up a little bit. That's step one to making them stand out a little bit more. Now I grabbed some, I was going to put some script stamp on there, but then I thought I've got these sentiments, I love you, heart, Valentine's Day type sentiments, and I'm using my black archival ink and I'm stamping them in various places. Now because it's black and I didn't zoom in here, you can't see it, but in real life you can really see it, and hopefully you can in the pictures that follow at the end of the video. But it's a great way to use sentiment stamps in a background. Now here I'm painting some of those circles from the stenciling that either I didn't put there or you can add to it. So use it as a jump start to what you do. If you want some of them more opaque, use a coat of paint on top of it. Now I'm using white because I like the white, but you can colorize them another color. Here I grab my white Posca pen. I'm drawing over the strings of the balloons. And then I'm going to outline the balloon, the heart-shaped balloons, and that's going to make them stand out from the background. And of course, before you use your Posca pen, you want everything to be dry. I don't videotape me using my heat tool. No one needs to watch paint dry. I'm adding some shading to inside the balloon with black paint and my angle brush. I also add some highlights with white following, but I didn't turn on the video. Didn't get it on video. Colored that one yellow, and I'm coloring this one teal because there is the teal in the background. And I wanted to tie everything together. I did shade both of the birds as well. And then I decide over here, the collage paper, it just seemed to be a little too small. I needed it somewhat bigger, so I'm ripping some more of that collage paper and I'm going to add it just to tweak the composition. And that's one of the advantages of having the collage paper there. I don't have to get out paint, I don't have to dirty another makeup sponge. That's all done and cleaned up. I can just utilize it. Now, on this, I've used the collage papers, the white collage papers, on a background that was already done. You can put it on a white background and then colorize it. I wonder how that would work. Another experiment for another day. And there we have that page. I decide I'm just going to add the word love using my wooden letter stamps, and I stamp it 3 different places on the background in the white. It's a very subtle sentiment this time. So I'm pretty sure you have tissue paper, and I'm pretty sure you have white paint of some kind and a makeup sponge. So go create your own DIY collage papers and use them. And when you create with them, please think about joining my Facebook group and posting it there so I can see what you've used them for. Enjoy the pictures of the finished pages. Until next time, go get creative.